All right. So welcome everybody to our inaugural user group meeting. I think this is going to be, judging by the fact that we have 20 people here, I'm super excited. I think this is going to be a good group. The goal for today, we have the agenda here on the next slide here. Cover these 6 items. I don't know if we have a time, what the time limit of the meeting is. I forget, probably 30 minutes?
An hour.
An hour. Okay, so we got some time. We'll cover all of these things. So just give an overview of what this group will be all about. Now, if you guys would like to introduce yourself in the chat, we can go ahead and do that. I think there's a slide here in a little bit to cover what it'll all be. But this is what we're going to cover. Really hoping to get, what do people want to get out of this group? And we're defining this as we go. And so it is really, the more discussion we can have, the better group we can have, I think. So, next slide. So since I'm unmuted, I will talk about myself first. I am a assistant professor in nanoscience and biomedical engineering. As it says here, I'm at South Dakota Mines in Rapid City, South Dakota. And in terms of the instrumentation, right now we have a home-built lattice light sheet that'll be the discussion that I'm interested in. So Claire.
So I'm Claire Brown. I'm at the Advanced Bioimaging Facility at McGill University in Montreal. And we just recently purchased the Zeiss Lattice Light Sheet. I think seeing the time and energy me and many other people have put into these national, international networks, really want to see how we can advance science faster as a community. So really looking forward to giving any input we can give on the system and the experiments and all the different aspects of Lattice Light Sheet, and also learning from others. So thanks for being here today.
I did just pop my name and serial number in the chat, but I'm program coordinator for Bioimaging North America and part of the administrative team based in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Hi everyone, I'm Vanessa. I'm the BINA program administrator. I'm based in Madison, Wisconsin at the Morgridge Institute for Research. So you've been getting lots of emails from Nikki and I welcoming you to this group. Thank you all so much for being here.
So as Brandon mentioned, we just wanted people to take an opportunity to introduce themselves in the chat. So I've listed here, if you can put your name, your institution or imaging facility, the type of light sheet you work with, and what field of research you work in. And then I think with the size of the group, it would be too long to do individual introductions. But if you make a contribution to the discussion, if you can just say your name and your institution or your company and the microscope that you're using, that'd be great. So maybe, yeah, we'll let people go ahead and keep introducing, but maybe I'll move on to the next slide at the same time. So we, when everybody registered for the group, we collected some demographic information, and it's quite impressive. So we have 132 people in the group at this time, and coming from many, many different countries, with the United States and France, a lot from France. And I think it's the UK is the 3rd highest there. It's not Brazil, I don't think. It's a little darker red, right? But great international representation. And one of the things we've done in our expansion microscopy group is we have a partner who hosts alternate meetings in the Asia Pacific time zone. So we could certainly discuss that if anyone here or if anybody has colleagues who might be interested in hosting a parallel meeting there to accommodate the time zones. We also have a pretty good distribution with a little under half the group being beginners in this area, 15% intermediate and 15% advanced. And then we have quite a few people, about 30%, who are just interested in learning more about technology, or this technology, I should say. We have a good distribution of positions, so a lot of imaging scientists, facility managers, and directors, but we also have a lot of industry partners and some principal investigators as well. And then we have a distribution of people working kind of close to half and half, I guess, on home built or 3i built systems built around the Janelia model and the Zeiss system. And then, as I mentioned, about 15% are here to learn more, so may not have a system. I'll send it back to you, Brandon.
Sorry, I was grabbing my notebook here so I can also take a few notes. So I think as we get back to where we were here. So this is now going to be the beginning of the interactive bit here. So it's going to be far less informative if it's just me rattling on. And so what do people want to get out of this group? And here I think it's best if, unmute and discuss. We can raise hands and go one at a time, try and keep it semi-orderly. But here, what do we hope to get out of this group? We have a few starters here, but I really want to know what everybody else wants rather than me dictating what we should do. So.
I guess I'll go first then, I guess, break the ice here. Yeah, I think for my facility, we're looking at support and help from a community of users for developing user resources, training manuals, support, etc., for getting users in the facility on the light sheet microscopes and getting good data off of it. The other part of this is the data handling. Very interested in how people are approaching data handling, data storage, data management, particularly with respects to the NIH's new data management plan requirements. So, I was curious about that.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak up. My name's Alex. I am a bit unusual here in that I'm not doing imaging, I think. So I more on the software side of things. I work commercially for Thermo Fisher, supporting Amira software. So my interest is understanding what people are doing with these newer imaging methods, understanding especially how people store and maybe handle the data, like as was mentioned, but also what do people want out of their data, and is there a path to incorporating any of those ideas in a commercial software?
I'd just like to echo that, Alex. That's really great that you're here, because I think a lot of us are more on the experimental side, and this is a huge challenge that we're going to face with this data, just in terms of the size and how to manipulate it and how to do the analysis with such large data sets and how to share it. And so I'm happy you're here with the group. I think this is a big part of what we can do better together.
If I can just add something. So I think it's really been quite special what Quarup have done, trying to figure out standard things like SOPs for benchmarking, things like that, data management, trying to standardize some of this stuff. You can tell I'm a facility manager, going straight for the boring stuff. So going for that and thinking about what we can do to benchmark our systems and work out if things are working correctly would be quite nice. Sorry, my name is Helena and I'm from Oxford.
So just so that you are all aware, we are taking some notes and we will make those available to you also. We are not taking down necessarily who makes comments unless you feel you want to go in afterwards and edit and say that you were the person making the comment in case you want to have discussion or interaction with anybody. So we try to keep it as sort of agnostic as possible. And then, as I say, if you feel like you want to use them to communicate, then you can edit them also. And Vanessa is busily putting these on the screen in front of you, so we'll be capturing that information in those documents too.
Okay, so my name is Xiang Wang. So I'm from University of Utah. So we have a imaging core. So we serve like 300 users annually. So right now we don't have any light sheet microscope. So my goal is trying to seek some help to decide which type of the light sheet microscope could fit in our core. But you know, in the market there are so many varieties. So it's hard for us to benefit all users, you know, from light sheet or like a large sample. So yeah, so decision making is the most important goal for me. And further, yeah, definitely we can think of the data storage and the image analysis, those kind of things. But right now we're trying to decide which one we should acquire.
Excellent. Michelle, I see your hand is raised.
I'm trying to be good and raise my hand. I echo all the comments here. So we have two light sheets in these actually, because I always forget about the other one. We've got a Zeiss lattice light sheet, which we've had about 18 months, I think. And we've used, so, and in fact, Helena and I and another group, when we all sort of got them roughly the same sort of time, we did have a little bit of a local user group to discuss how the Zeiss lattice light sheet work and how to get the best out of them, which we've kind of dropped because we've been so busy. But they were very useful because we did talk about what sort of specimens we were putting on the light sheet, how they worked, what sort of imaging, what the problems we found were, whether Zeiss had found the workarounds that we needed to get the sort of imaging that we needed. Because they were all, you know, I think there still are only 3 lattice light sheets in the UK. I think that's right. Possibly, maybe that's gone up now. But that was really useful to compare for a specific machine what the challenges were and how to get the best out of them, especially when they're new. But we also have a second light sheet, which is it's the type of light sheet that you might want to use for big things like a whole brain or a whole embryo, something like that. Where you have to clear, and that's also very useful. So I was reminded about that from this decision on purchasing, because it really does depend on what you want to use your light sheet for, what sort of specimens you want to image. So actually a discussion about different specimens, what you image with your particular light sheet, what the pluses and minuses are of that specific system, would also be, I think, a very useful contribution. We've had all sorts of things. We've even had lipid vesicles where you mix 2 lipid vesicles together and they kind of collapse and do all this amazing stuff, imaged in 3D very fast, very good. You know, so there's all sorts of things you can do with a light sheet that maybe you never knew until you asked.
Any other dying thoughts on this? I think this is a pretty good starting list. So I would see this as a start. This doesn't have to be exactly what we get out, but I think this gives us some roadmap to move forward.
I just had one other comment, Brandon, I guess just based on Michelle's comment. We had intended this group to be for Lattice Lightsheet, and I know there was a lot of interest from people with Lightsheet in general, and especially the systems that are out there with the larger for larger samples. And I would just encourage if there's anybody interested in maybe heading up a group, because I think if you look at the list we have right now, we even if we just focus on Lattice Lightsheet, there's a lot of directions we could go. So I think it would make sense to maybe have a separate group for Lightsheet in general for larger samples and cleared tissue and so on. And then the other comment I would make based on this list is maybe we want to think we're going to talk a little bit in one of the next slides about how we want to organize. Like, do we want to have a subgroup on image analysis or a subgroup on research data management, and maybe those could merge with other groups in Core App and other communities if it made sense.
Mhm.
And the last point I would want to add here is user group meetings, because I'd really like to focus in on you know, like for myself, the people who have the Zeiss Lattice Lightsheet, and could we really talk about a lot of these details of how to train, and are people training users, or are you doing assisted operation with your staff, and are there certain you know, samples that work really well, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that could be interesting too, to maybe have some subgroups on different topics, and then maybe we can have in-person or virtual or hybrid meetings on specific technologies.
I think that's good. I mean, we've had lots of different, we have obviously the clearing thing was targeted at the person who was trying to decide which kind of light sheet to buy. If you're talking about just Lattice Lightsheets, which is absolutely fine for this group to be all about, because as you said, there's lots of people, there's still lots of different things that people put on their Lattice sheet, and things that perhaps work well, because we've already had expansion microscopy samples, you know, live cell imaging, organoid imaging, spheroid imaging, and as I said, that we've had these lipid, you know, chemistry going on the Lattice Lightsheet. So lots of different things. And I know other people, and we don't do it at Leeds, but I know other people do things like C. elegans and zebrafish and so on. So I think just getting an idea of the different samples that people even just put on the Lattice Lightsheet, and what the challenges are, and what, you know, which works, what doesn't, what you have to think about, would be really good. Helena and I, when we were having our little work, you know, little local user group, would talk about all the different challenges, like how to set up different modes of imaging, if you want big fields of view, if you want to sort of the more tiled thing. And then on top of that, as we've seen, there is the actual analysis side of things, because we have a Revis, which was provided to us by Zeiss. And the Revis is not the easiest software to use. I don't know if other people have tried a Revis. I think Helen has been trying Napari. I'm sure she's got her hand up, she's going to tell us. But again, it's how you render your images, how you analyze your images, because not just how you store them, but how you actually process them, how you do the image analysis, when to use deconvolution, when not to use deconvolution, all that sort of downstream after you've collected your images, all of that sort of thing would be, I think, really helpful. You know, when is it worth doing deconvolution, when is it not? I could go on, but I'll shut up now because Helena's had her hand up for a long time.
Thanks, Ashar. Yeah, I was gonna touch on the other light sheet thing, but just on what you said, yeah, I have tried out Napari, and not with great success, because I'm not a very good image processing person. So it's great if we have people, if there are people who are involved in the image analysis which aren't in this group, getting them on board, I think, would be really valuable. Even if we just pick one of the months to focus on that, and they not necessarily interested in the ins and outs with the biology the rest of the time, that would be really good. But the point I was going to make on other light sheet things, some colleagues and I, we did start a Slack group called Wild Sheet, which basically it was a channel for every type of light sheet, so that people could come together and just put in the things. But we really struggled with participation on Slack, and also that Slack really narrowed down on their ability to keep data beyond 90 days.
Right.
As in, we don't have money to subscribe.
Right.
But if anyone was interested in using that as a platform to either revive or come up with something else, I'd be interested in reviving that.
If you're looking for a chat client, you can use Zulip. So I switched to that when Napari, or sorry, not Napari, got all these things in my head. Slack switched to getting rid of stuff after 90 days. So Zulip is free, open source, especially if you are in education or research. As long as you're non-commercial, you can get their pro version. You just have to talk to them. But that is a one for one switch with Slack, but you keep the data.
Thank you.
I think the problem with things like, well, maybe it's me and I don't set it up in the right way, but the nice thing about the confocal listserv is that an email comes in your inbox, you can quickly read it and then think, do I have anything to say about that, or should I just ignore that? So the list, and I find, I mean, I don't know how many people here found out about this user group, but I certainly saw it advertised on the confocal listserv. You did put it on there, didn't you, Claire? So I don't know whether it's worth trying to set up a listserv for Lattice Lightsheet, because I actually find it quite nice that an email comes in my inbox and I can either reply because I know exactly what to say, or I can just say, oh, I don't really know about that, but I hope somebody does, and just file it away for safekeeping later. But it also, I think it gets posted, all the comments on listserv get posted somewhere, don't they? So that you can, if you do a search, you can actually find them.
Yeah, you can also do a daily digest. That's what I prefer. So you just get an email of all the messages from the previous day. But I think this is something, something we can talk about. I really struggle with this too. I just put in the chat, somebody had told me it's called app fatigue, and it's just like, how many places do I need to go to check?
Exactly.
And I think it depends on the person and their style. For the expansion group, we've decided to just go with Google Docs, and we have a discussion Google Doc. I don't know if that's going to work well or not, but you can tag people in that, so they will get an email that somebody's made a comment in the document. But I know, like with Slack, you can also set it up so it'll email you and when there's a new comment on the list you're on, but I understand the 90-day issues. So I think it's something we could talk about, and if people have ideas, but I think whatever we do, some people are going to like it and some people aren't. So we can definitely keep using the confocal list. I'm 100% for that.
I think David makes a good point in the chat too, that maybe we also want to capitalize on some of the things that already exist, like the image SC for the analysis side of things. That's a really, really popular community, and a lot of the developers are there. So, to some extent, maybe we should go to where they are. At least on the analysis side. I admit it may not be the perfect solution for the discussion of samples and sample prep and on technique and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, for the analysis, certainly that is a great community resource to tap into.
Hello, so my name is Mathieu Ducrot. I work at the Bordeaux Imaging Center, and just wanted to tell you that there's also a discussion group that was started in the early days of Lattice Lightsheet, when Eric Betzig's team gave the plans, the blueprints to reproduce the system. It's a Google group, and I think if you join the HHMI Advanced Imaging Center, you can ask to be registered and have the mails from this group. It's especially useful if you have a home-built Lattice Lightsheet, obviously, because they talk about special parts and hardware modification, but also about software and things like that. So it could be interesting for the whole community.
So is this something that we could maybe put into one of the documents as a resource that people can look into? Do you have a link for that, or shall we can go look for it?
I can search in my mail the person who was in charge of adding people to this Google group.
I think that would be helpful. Then we can put it in the document, and then anybody that's interested can reach out.
Yes, okay, I'll search.
Hey, could I add one thing to this list?
Please.
Yeah, so one thing we haven't talked about is instrument hacks. So we have a Zeiss Lattice Lightsheet 7, and people are interested in perfusion systems. So I'm currently designing one. I've got a plan in mind on how to do it, but I'm just working from you know, I don't know if anyone else has tried to solve you know, getting tubing down into the system and how to do that. So that would be a fun thing to get other people's input on.
Sounds like that might be something that Genelia Group might be able to help with, because I think that they do a lot of that sort of thing too.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah,
I was going to say that's a really good point. With the expansion group, we've set up some online forms that people can fill out if they have a protocol they want to share, or if they have feedback like certain dyes that work really well or don't work really well. So we could set up a Google form, and then people can, you know, put in a little bit of information about the resource or the protocol they have, and, you know, link to a URL or publication, or even just that they're interested in that topic, you know. It's actually a good segue, I think, to one of our later slides where we're going to talk a little bit more about process. So did we want to move on, Brandon, or is there any other comments on, as Brandon said, this list could change, so.
Yeah, then we can go to the next slide. Perfect.
If I may add something, this is Alexander from University of Maryland. We have Zeiss Lattice Lightsheet, and some of our users require high resolution images. So if we could discuss at some point how to do proper deconvolution, skewing deconvolution, things like that, and what sort of processing artifact people may see, and like how to avoid those. So things of that nature. Also tiling, we do a lot of tiling, and I think the software is not perfect. Sometimes you see bugs coming up. So some experience with that, tiling stitching. We also do expanded microscopy samples on thick slabs of tissue. So 3D tiling actually for those.
And actually, maybe just before we move on, I know we have some people who are here from companies. Is there anything you would want to add to this list in terms of your involvement in the group and what you would hope to get out of this?
I'll start. My name is Andrew Brazia. I'm the 3i Lattice Lightsheet product manager. I'm here to hear what the community is interested in. This helps me on the commercial side decide how I would navigate our product through the world and how to outreach more users, but also just to see what people's current thoughts on the technologies are, things that they're having issues with. This is an incredible list. Some of the things that we've tried to focus on, some things I haven't focused on at all. So it's really nice to just see a broader environment of people discussing this instead of just one-on-one conversations that I kind of then just piece together what I think is important for us. So thanks for including us commercial folk as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Renee. I am the product marketing manager for Zeiss in North America for the Lattice Lightsheet. And thank you very much for the organizers for getting this group going and for including us in it as well. And, I would echo some of what Andrew said and also say, we're here to hopefully help be a resource for the community in whatever way that we can to help enable your research and your utilization of the technology. And so, thank you very much for having us, and please feel free to reach out if there's anything we can help with.
Yeah, hello everyone. So that same goes for me. My name is Kirsten. I work also for Zeiss, but at headquarters in Germany. So from my side, I can only second what everyone else said. So I want to get out of this. I want to understand what people use the instrument for, what they want to get out of it, and otherwise support you guys as much as possible to get as much as possible out of the system that's possible, that you can.
I already introduced myself. I'm Alex with Thermo Fisher. Again, on the software side of things, I'm also in listening mode to see what kinds of analyses people expect. Working with huge amounts of data is challenging, right? And it's technical to do the sample prep, it's technical to assemble the microscopes, and it's technical to run the microscopes. But what I'm noticing is the end users are expecting a lot of the convenience and ease of use of data loaded in memory from these large lattice light sheet data. And in a perfect world, it would just work, but it's not so simple. So we have to take note in the commercial world of what are the most common needs and requests, and can we make smart compromises to accommodate maybe a large bulk of the users as best as possible. So that's what I'm listening for.
All right, so this is the responses from our poll. It looks like we got 24 responses from people. And this is just to get an idea of what, should we be planning for the, the couple, first couple meetings. We're meeting bi-weekly, I wish, bi-monthly. And, it's gonna be April the next time we meet. And so trying to come up with a plan of what do we want to talk about? Can we plan those meetings out in advance to do something useful? Rather than, I think having everybody come together and talk is great, but can we do something more, right? And so I think this is really the topics here. I think hit on all of the things people wanted to get out of it, right? Instrument prep, infrastructure needs, analysis, visualization, like those are the top three. And I think that encompasses the big list of what people want to get out of it. I think the question, so like that's the discussion. I think the more important one is how do we want to discuss that, right? And I think that's what's coming up here, right? Yeah, so Claire, if you want to take over in terms of what our formats are.
Yeah, so we just pre-populated this with some ideas, some of them based on what we've been doing with the expansion microscopy group. But again, we'd like to hear from you about what you about how I guess we'd like to communicate and interact and deliver some output. So we had put down bi-monthly meetings. So we tried meeting monthly with the expansion group, but everybody's so busy, it just became like, finding the next topic and the next speaker. And so I think every other month is good. We could have subgroups. We'd already mentioned this, like maybe there's a group really interested in image analysis, or maybe there's a group that wants to focus more on sample prep or even just understand the different types of samples, as Michelle had mentioned. I won't go through all the list here, but yeah, so maybe we can just hear from people if you have ideas of how you would like to interact. Or if you want to confirm some that we have listed,
I would say that I'm fond of the confocal listserv approach, as was mentioned. The asynchronous nature allows people to catch up when they're not too busy with other things. We are all busy, it's true. So it's nice to at least have that. It could be in addition to some other, more in-person kind of thing, but it's a very good idea.
So just to clarify, is that endorsing this idea of an open document and recording the meetings so that people who might not have been able to attend can actually catch up with them on their own time?
I think those are two separate topics. The notes, of course, from these meetings and recorded resources will be valuable, but I think also the ask for some kind of way of communication that's asynchronous, that can be done through either a chat method or an email method. And I think it sounds like even email is preferred. So we can look at what listserv options or things like that. Yes, Brandon has also highlighted that there is the microlist forum. So I personally have not used that very much, but if that is a good space for microscopy specific techniques, then that might be a great way to go as well.
Yeah, that would be as simple as, making a tag in there rather than having, the listserv I think is great, but that's a lot of effort to get the infrastructure in place and get people using it. So I think if we can go to where people already are and just carve out a little niche in there, I think we'd have might have better success doing that. Because talking to people every 2 months, right? You don't get a whole lot accomplished in that. Lots of fits and starts. So I think that the asynchronous is, as a part of it, I think is a tremendous idea. I will interject one thing in here is what I think for each meeting. I think if we could have something that was very focused on a topic, each of the next meetings, that's what I think would be super useful for everybody. And that would excite me, right? If we had one topic, this is the thing we're going to talk about, rather than this nebulous, we're going to talk about everything and keep it very surface level. But if we can integrate, one idea that came to mind when we were talking about these standard operating procedures is like, we all should or do measure our laser power at the back focal plane, right? Or near the back focal plane. How do we do that? Is there a way that we can show that in here in a recorded way, right? Or are there ways that we can do some simple demos like that that become very useful later in the line, that can be incorporated into other things? Those are one of the ideas that come to mind for what I would see. And I would now open it up very much to others to see what you guys, what format do you want to see?
Go for it, Jonathan. Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, John Mulholland here. I'm at Stanford University's imaging facility in the U.S. So I think this having a single subject prepared ahead of time that we can all focus on is great. I wanted to come back to how subgroups would work, though. What are people envisioning for subgroups? Is this something that would meet separately from this group, and then we would report back to this group on certain areas that the subgroup's working on? And yeah, I'm just curious what the vision for subgroups is. I mean, I love subgroups, but is this a separate meeting for subgroups? And yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the question. For me, I'm really interested in forming a subgroup of the people with the Zeiss instrument, because I think there's a lot of things we can do in terms of like training and standards and that I think sample prep, image analysis, these things can be more broad because everybody's doing that regardless of the instrument. So that's something I'm interested in. I was thinking if there was enough interest, we could even do that on the off month. We could keep the same time and so on, but do it on the off month. And I think by nature of the subgroups, it would be a subgroup of the membership, because some people might not be interested in that topic, right? But they could be done in other ways. Maybe they only meet in person. Once a year they meet in person about a specific. Maybe even with that one we could even have an in-person meeting. To talk about build the community and talk about different aspects. But that's what I had envisioned. So anyone else, or Brandon, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I mean the subgroups. For me, it becomes a question of how fine is too fine. I think right now we have 30 people here. So if we had a subgroup of 30, is that 5? Is that 3 people? Like at this point, like, to me, I felt like we've carved out a subgroup, you know, because we've excluded by definition, right, other light sheets that are even still doing single cell or organelle, right, not whole organism. So that's, you know, my 2 cents is like, for me, again, with time as well, like this, I'm considering my subgroup. This is my level, my unit. Others feel free to do that. I guess I don't have strong opinions on making an additional one, because I feel like this is the unit of operation for what I'm comfortable with. So.
Alexander?
Yes, I was going to throw in this idea of maybe using Slack, where we could have several channels, and that may help facilitate forming the subgroups, or maybe just keeping it as a separate Slack channel where people update each other on papers or experiences, you know, something that we can contribute to offline, you know, as things arise.
The other,
I think we have Dina Slack already, right? And
ours is not a paid version either, unfortunately, but it's something we could potentially look into if it's you know, of value to the community to keep this going.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Brandon, the other platform you mentioned, is it, could we just use some keywords that we could have some conversations?
Yeah, so they in Microforum, right? I mean, this is they already have categories: hardware, theory, software, right? Probes and prep, commercial. So they have a whole bunch of things, and you can add your own tag to whatever you are wanting to put in there. And I'm trying to see, I'm looking right now, is Lightsheet. Yeah, so Lightsheet is a tag already. I'm sure if you really wanted, you could add, like, we could make a specific Lattice Lightsheet tag. There's just, you know, that's already kind of established. It is a forum that you can go and look at. You can get notifications the same as you would as Slack if you wanted, but others are already there, right? So this is very much a case of not building something different just for the sake of building something different, right? So it's like, okay, let's use this. Others are, and others can get involved with that as much as they wanted to as well, right? I guess that would be really the thought. If it's going to be asynchronous, it's stored forever on their forum, which is, I think, the biggest downfall for Slack for me is after 90 days, it's gone, right? Unless you're paying for it. And so I don't think that's something that is super useful.
The other thing I was going to mention is I think the subgroup would need someone to lead. So, or even it's nice when you have 2 people to kind of pass off depending on how busy people are, because I think you need someone with the momentum to keep it moving, you know? So I think just noticed Matthew had mentioned having a group for homemade Lattice Lightsheet and hardware modifications and tuning. So that would be important if there is a topic people want to dig deeper, that 1 or 2 people take a lead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jonathan, that's a great comment there. That was something that we were discussing just before we started here, is potentially putting together another Google form where people can also put in their expertise, their place where they are, and as much information in terms of contact information that they'd like to contribute to that, to try and build, you know, that network of people. So it becomes then a searchable document for the group where we're like, this person does XYZ, right? So I think that's a really, really good idea.
So if it turned out that we did have subgroups separating off, that document could also indicate who was leading which different subgroups, so that anybody that's joining and they had a specific interest in, say, sample preparation, could know that that would be the person to reach out to find out when that subgroup was having their meetings.
Right. I think if there were subgroups, I would really like to see at some point the subgroups come back and report back, or that is the focus of one of the meetings is, the home built subgroup users are going to give, that meeting, but then, right, just so it's not a different meeting, right, and just siphoning people off in that way.
Yeah, so to me, I think the two most obvious subgroups are the 3i design home built that have the similar architecture, and the Zeiss group. And then I think other topics can probably just be, monthly topics or bi-monthly topics that we talk about with the group. But I like the idea of reporting back. That's a great idea.
I mean, with the differences between the two, like how fine of a difference are we talking? I mean, are we talking between in the two subgroups? What do people envision talking about there that would not be relevant for the whole of the group? I guess would be the biggest question I have.
Having worked with both, I think the upright versus inverted design does make it, or the dipping versus the invert design does make a big difference. And then the flexibility, or rather the requirement to align, is very different on the 3i system to the Zeiss system, for example. It's not that some things wouldn't be of interest to other people, but talking about how you do a calibration or a setup on one instrument is very different to the other instrument.
Sure.
I definitely agree with what you just said, Elena, and just want to also add that on the homemade Lattice Lightsheet, you can also consider modifying parts if you have skills and energy to add, for example, photo manipulation or things like that, which you cannot do obviously on the Zeiss system. So that's what we do here in Bordeaux. And so maybe I can share this expertise with other people if they want to implement the same things.
I see our time is quickly ticking by, so I think we've already touched on this a little bit, but we're thinking about what kind of outputs the group could have and how could they be distributed and shared. So I think we've covered the sort of listserv idea, but are there other, like, do we want to eventually come up with a publication, or if we have protocols for stitching or image analysis, is that something we'd want to publish as a community, and so on. So maybe just some ideas of, if people have ideas of what outputs they'd like to see from the group. This could also be something that maybe evolves a bit more as we get going.
Mm-hmm.
John here again. I think the whole idea, I think it was Brandon who suggested demos or recordings of demos. I think that would be extremely useful. I'm not sure how we would do that production wise, but I think that'd be really cool.
So Bina just recently did a workshop on making high quality training videos, and I don't know if Nikki or Vanessa wants to add, but they have a kit in a hard suitcase that they're shipping around with all the video equipment and everything that you need to record. So
so yes, this is still in sort of prototype pilot phase. We've got a couple of folks that are piloting it for us to iron out some of the wrinkles, but yes, this is something that we are considering doing, is providing how you can do this and the hardware with which to do it.
Oh, that is awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Yep, the coordinator of that, or the expert working on that, is Brian Millis, who's a real hardware guy, and he's done the deep dive into the video hardware as well, and so he's willing to share that document, so we could also source that document here when we discuss that.
And I know we have a very international group, so I'm sure that could be replicated in other geographic areas if there was a lot of interest in Europe, for example, you know.
So yeah, I think the parts list he's willing to share with anybody at this point if people want to start building their own cases. So on the front of recording demos, is this something that some of the corporate partners would be willing to help with too? I mean, we have some of them on the call right now. We tend to jump in and say, oh yeah, we can do that, but you know, you might have access to even more professional technologies, and it might be something that, you know, this is something this community sounds like they would find beneficial. Is it something that could be perhaps put on a wish list on your end too, potentially?
I'll say yes. I mean, we've done the early COVID days. We were all webinar happy. So at least us at 3i, I'm sure our partners at Zeiss, same thing, have a lot of experience doing this now. It's no longer as awkward for me to do a system demonstration virtually as it was 3 years ago. We didn't do them very often. So we're happy to do things like that. Our current webinars are hosted on our website, but we also do them with individual groups as needed.
A similar situation for, sorry, you finished, Andrew?
Go ahead, Renee.
Yeah, from our side at Zeiss, we've done a lot of remote demos and often can record them. So I'd be curious to hear from the community, you know, if there are specific topics that would be particularly helpful. We may already have something that we could share, or we could look into what it would take to do that. So certainly happy to be involved in those conversations.
So I did just drop a link in the chat. So if you have things like that, we are trying to collect them all in a centralized database called a Microscopy DB, where the content from those databases then spun up on a lot of the imaging network websites. So if you have training materials like these sorts of things, there's a training database. So the link on the page I sent you was actually for events. So when you're hosting these webinars, if you put them into BINA's form, it actually opens up as a Microscopy DB form, but it goes on our web page. It goes on our page so that our community can see it. The German bioimaging community are talking about putting that content on their web page. Canada Bioimaging has it on their web page. So it's helping to disseminate those opportunities to a much broader audience. And then, like I say, if you record any of those materials, put them in the training and education database, where people can then search that database for, you know, demo on specific system, and they can then pull up the YouTube video or whatever it is that you have. So we are trying to collect a lot of these resources, and BINA is partnering with this effort. Latin America Bioimaging, Africa Bioimaging, Canada Bioimaging, German Bioimaging. You can put jobs up there as well. So it's trying to collect all of the resources that are of interest to people around any of these microscopy related topics into sort of a centralized data repository. And you can access it from any of the BINA pages, or you can Google Microscopy DB.
That's great to learn about, Nikki. Thank you. To look into that further.
One of the other things I'd like to see myself is sharing of training resources. And we've been working on step-by-step training, like literally click this button, open this window, click that button, you know, and I'd love to see what other people have already done, and I'd be more than happy to share what we end up developing in the end. So I think that one I also see it'd be nice if we're all doing similar training and can also learn from each other's training style or training content and do things more efficiently. So I guess I'm sure this will evolve as we go. So I see we're right at the end of our time. So I'm just going to go on to the next slide, which I believe Vanessa will comment.
So I just wanted to share that we do have a couple events coming up, and sorry, Claire, you want to hit the slideshow button. So we do have the expansion microscopy user group. That's another user group that's going on in collaboration with Canada Bioimaging and the RMS. So if you're interested in that, that meets the first Wednesday every other month. And so their next meeting will be, I'm seeing April 4, which tells me that's wrong. I believe it's April 5, because I think this group's next meeting is April 4. But then we have a scientific speaker series starting in February, and we also have a career speaker series that is starting up in February. And the details of all of those are on our activities page. You can find links to registrations of all of those. And I just wanted to emphasize that if you register for any of those events, it doesn't make you a BINA member. So if you want to stay up to date on all of the other stuff we have going on for the community, please sign up to join us. It's free, and we send a newsletter once a month, so we won't be spamming your inbox too much either. So thank you very, very much for being here. We'll stick around for a little bit if anyone has questions or comments, but thanks very much for being at the kickoff meeting. Claire?
I was just going to say we can also share these slides, so you'll have all the links if you want to connect with anything, and we can update the date on that one. And so yeah, our next meeting will be on Tuesday, April 4th at the same time. And I think we'll send out some communication with links to the documents and the slides and so on, and also probably probe to see if there's somebody who wants to run a parallel meeting in an alternate time zone. So thanks everyone for being here, and thanks Brandon for co-chairing the session. And it seems like a really great group.
Yeah, we're very excited. I think this is going to be really good. Thank you all.